When you're preparing for your first Hyflex class, I think the first thing you need to figure out is what your priorities are. And I recommend, like we've been taught in many of our workshops, by the way, if you can take a workshop, please do, because you can learn so much. It's amazing. And by talking to other people, but planning like for the whole week instead of planning class by class, at the minimum a whole week is important, and having setting a goal for the week, because then um, it is much easier for you to plan how you're going to teach and how you're going to prioritize, like the people in the classroom or the people on Zoom. Um, then also remember that things don't always happen the way you want them to, like walking into a class and finding there is absolutely no one in the classroom because it so happened that a couple of them are in quarantine or decided that they were in contact with someone that could possibly have COVID, so they decided not to come, and they started talking to each other, so no one came. So you have to be able to adjust to having mostly everything online or focusing on face to face, and you have to set things up in a way that you can move from one format or to the other easily. You also have to be ready to adjust in case of technical issues. So if Zoom fails, have WebEx set up so that you can move to that, or Google Meetings or something, so you can move to something else and not waste too much time. Also, know that if the sound fails in the classroom, you can turn the sound off and call in with your phone and use your phone for sound. So I've had to do that numerous times, because if you call Six Tech, they won't necessarily get there in time to solve the problem for you. So having ways to get things solved beforehand, figuring out how you can move between face-to-face and Zoom. Also, I do recommend having a central document that you can use so that other instructors, so that other instructors, so that students and you and other people can actually look at that one document and work with it together, so that you can see what everyone is doing, because it's very difficult to toggle between breakout rooms. And if you toggle between them too much, occasionally Zoom will fall. And if it falls for you, it falls for everyone sometimes. And then you have to start it back up, and it's just a problem. So toggling between breakout rooms can sometimes be problematic.
In those first couple of weeks, get to know your students so that you know what you're going to be able to do and what you're not going to be able to do, because each set of students can be different. um, I would also, before the semester, think of some alternate ways in which students can achieve learning goals. And sometimes we're so proud of our schedules and the way that we kind of schedule for students to do certain things, that we don't schedule or plan in alternate ways for students to achieve the same goals. So I know in my next semester, I am going to pre-plan some alternatives for students so that if I need them, I don't have to work so hard to get to them. So I think that if I was to tell someone else to do it, plan your regular schedule, but also go ahead and plan some alternates in there, and understand that students are going to be different and that they can learn just as much in an alternate way.
I would say my advice would really be in this case, students first. So being able to evaluate, the current circumstances of what's going on, and understanding, kind of the needs of the class that you're going to have. Because you never know what sort of students you're going to have, whether it's a first generation student, or somebody who's, is going to be in the classroom all the time with it. So my advice is listen to the students, and understand where are they coming from and what's going to be best for them to get the education that they need. The second advice is don't try not to force the hand too much of students. In other words, if especially in our current environment, not forcing students to do something that they would be uncomfortable about. In other words, I've really enjoyed my model that I've incorporated with recorded lectures. Students love that. Being able to be face-to-face for those students who really want to be face-to-face, I appreciate that, and the students really appreciate that. As well as doing a live also with Zoom. Providing all of these different formats I've found have been really helpful for students and really helps their education environment. The other thing I would say is make sure to keep contact with the students. Figure out different ways or different platforms that you can reach out to them, and different modalities, whether it's through sending out a message or through like an email or a video message or video announcements. I think that the students really respond well to those different ways.
Give everyone the advice, including myself and all of my instructors, that we need to be as absolutely clear as possible in our online delivery. So it feels oftentimes when you're setting up modules like you are saying it too much, like you're repeating yourself constantly. And I felt like those classes actually were the clearest online. I would also recommend that if you're using modules, just use modules and don't let the students see the assignments. If you're using assignments, just use assignments and don't let them see the modules, because that caused a lot of confusion going back and forth. Always make sure that you set the assignment to actually have a due date. Many students will never see the assignment unless you set it to have a due date, even though you have put the information in the system. So take that extra time to make sure that all the due dates are set. If you have multiple sections, you certainly can add multiple due dates. So that's what we actually ended up doing for most of our courses, is because we had A students that came on Monday and B students that came on Wednesday, they both had separate due dates set up in Canvas. So they would see separate information. It was all in the same shell, but it took a lot of extra time to set up those due dates, but I think it was much clearer for the student. Have as much grace and compassion as you can for the students, but also for yourself. I know that we struggled throughout the semester with that balance of holding ourselves and holding students accountable, but then also recognizing that we are in just very confusing times. And so just remembering that we have to exhibit that compassion, that grace, and we also have to be ethical and have clear expectations. So finding a balance between those elements. The importance of modeling strong teaching, modeling appropriate leadership, but then also being very authentic and helping everyone around us to recognize that we don't have all of the answers. We are all continuously learning ourselves, and to embrace that, and to help everyone in the community continue to learn and continue to grow, and recognize that we can change things and we can eliminate things if they're not working. So I think that has been a particularly helpful piece for us.
Give them due dates, but be very generous, I think, with the deadlines. For some students need it. And even if they don't have an excuse like I was sick or what have you. And then for just any time, I guess as much sort of active learning as they can do online is probably good. You know, like I said, with my classes, there wasn't a lot of discussion boarding. I mean, we did like some sort of icebreaker things, introducing yourselves, and a little bit of sharing, you know, like what they enjoy about fashion and apparel. And the students were pretty good on it. They're probably more used to doing that kind of thing than I am, you know, because they've had it in other courses. But even just the interactive quizzes on videos and that type of thing. I think just engages them a little bit more. So, and yeah, reminders, lots of reminders. And I guess, like you said, if you can break things up and sort of say, you know, you should be doing this and that on the, if it's a larger kind of project. I mean, it's also been interesting this whole time because I have high schoolers, and so, you know, they're learning and doing the, they're the students in my house, you know, sometimes complaining about things on Canvas or whatever. And, you know, there've been more than one time where I've tried to help them out, and look, it's right there. You know, they said, don't try to upload more than one file or whatever, you know. So it's, you know, interesting to just see it from through my kids, how they'll miss things, you know. And so to remember that, you know, it's just normal to like miss and forget stuff.
When planning for a hybrid class, there are a few things I would do ahead of time to make things go smoother. So one of those is I would think about groups. In an interactive hybrid classroom, I'm going to want to split them into breakouts. So I need to strategically think about who I want and not be last minute on that. I can always do a really quick, if I don't care who's in each group, right? I can do a quick automatic, I need 5 groups, bam, and it will go quickly and they're not waiting on me. Lots of times I'll build a break into my lesson. And so during the break, I set up groups. I deal with educators. So if I wanted elementary, middle, and high, all in a separate group so that they're discussing things on their particular level, I can think about that ahead of time. Or public school academic librarians, whatever class I might be teaching. So think about that ahead of time. Number 2, set up those nonverbal clues. That's important because if you have that set up in Zoom, you can quickly get feedback in a much more efficient manner. Number 3, think about what tools I will be using and incorporate the instructions on that tool. Whether you're using a Padlet or a Lenote, set it up ahead of time and structure it in a way that will be simplified for your students to be able to participate. So that you click the plus under the group. So group 1 is doing this article and have it linked right there so that they don't have to go somewhere else to get the article. It's all within the one tool that they need. So you only have to share one link and everything they'll need is in it. Each group could have a different article. Each group could have a different tool they were reviewing, whatever they're doing. And then make sure that it's organized ahead of time. Same thing if you're doing a Google Doc or a Google Sheet that you want them to collaborate in and they get one line, right? Plan ahead, give some space so it doesn't keep jumping because they'll get frustrated with that. And make sure ahead of time that things are unlocked, because even if they're in-house or distant, if them to be edit something in Google, make sure it's unlocked for for edit privileges and not just viewer privileges. Or you change the privacy settings so people can contribute and add, even in a Padlet, you have to do that. So think about those things ahead of time so that it's not clunky. But if not, you know, everyone is definitely, they understand because they're doing these kinds of things themselves. So they're going to be understanding about that, but think about those things ahead of time and it will go smoother. Also in a hybrid situation, come prepared. Just like you were teaching 25 people online, you know, whatever you are face to face, make sure you have the materials you need. If you're doing literature, have lots of different options. You had 5 people in class, especially during COVID, they can't touch the same materials, right? So have something that they can look at in person and also something you can put under the screen, under the document camera. So think ahead about the materials you would need, just like you had 25. You would prepare hands-on materials, prepare your online materials in the same way.
I think the first thing to make sure that you're doing is not taking on too much, trying to find the sort of the technological tool that's going to best match what you are trying to do with your course, and focus on that and do it really, really well. And then as subsequent semesters, come to fruition, keep detailed notes of what's going right, what's going different, ask for feedback from your students, ask them to be honest. We're all learning together, and you're doing this for them, right? I think that's an important thing to remind them, is that I'm just trying to help you learn and be successful. So if there's something that you want me to do different, let me know and we'll figure out how to do that. So I think starting small, streamlining things to make sure that you're hitting those broad strokes, the most important and critical concepts of your course, and really sticking to the teaching points there. I'm forgetting what the words are, but the objectives, your teaching objectives, I think is really important. And then including students in that process. And that doesn't mean that they have to drive per se, but asking for feedback. And if they've got good, meaningful feedback, then by all means, try to put that into implementation to help improve their learning. So I think those are the main things to think about, which are kind of similar to any time you're teaching a new course, but particularly when it's a new format, because it didn't seem like it would be difficult, but there were more hiccups than I was anticipating.